What in the ninth circle of hell is this? Oh my god, I'm sorry, I completely forgot about the Human Gigafactory and Mississippi sperm. Buried in the Epstein emails is a discussion about funding a project on designer babies and human cloning, and the scientist behind it is completely unknown. The scientist wasn't just mentioned in passing. Rather, Epstein and his associates explicitly talked about project goals, structure, timeline, and desired outcomes. Hi, Quothy. Would you like to say anything? No? Okay. In a previous video, I covered the emails which show detailed discussions on the project, but outside of these documents, not much is known about this person. In this video, I'll be digging into who this scientist really is, their background, and the most surprising things I found while researching them. My name is Kat, and I will be your guide through the public catacombs we call the internet. By the end of this video, we will gain insight into one of the most bizarre scientific discussions in the Epstein emails. While the email addresses may be redacted, the name of Epstein's so-called genetic connoisseur is not. Sucks not to be a billionaire, they did not redact his ass. Up until now, I've been referring to Brian Bishop as a scientist, which makes sense given the topic of human cloning and designer babies. But in reality, Brian is a software and IT specialist, with a focus on Bitcoin and blockchain during certain points in his career. On his public LinkedIn profile, Brian describes himself as someone who prints money with high-leverage software. A software engineer who works across different sectors such as software as a service, crypto, financial technology, and biotech. His work history spans multiple companies and sectors for the past 2 decades, including roles in software engineering for bioinformatics and other science-adjacent technologies. Yet, what's missing from his resume is any traditional scientific experience. No lab work, no scientific research publications, and no formal training in genetics or biology. Despite being involved in projects connected to biology, his experience remains firmly in software and technology, not in bench science. Brian is insufferable and arrogant, but profitable, beloved, and irresistible. And no, those are not my words to describe him, those are how he would describe himself. While Brian lacks an academic or research foundation in the biological sciences, one could argue he makes up for with his passion for DIY hobby biology, or as he might put it, garage biology. He is so passionate about the topic that he has created and maintains a website entirely dedicated to the subject called DIY Human Plus, a wiki for do-it-yourself biohacking, open source hardware, and transhuman tech. On his website, one might find a myriad of topics ranging from artificial wombs, brain uploading, don't forget about the Bitcoin of course, cloning, cryonics, designer babies, yep, DIY bio in general, I guess, gene editing, gene therapy, another gene editing and gene therapy and gene modifications, octopus, just pain, robots, then transhumanism. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I completely forgot about the Human Gigafactory. We cannot forget about the Human Gigafactory. You know what, I'm really curious now. Let's go ahead and take a look to see what he has to say about the Human Gigafactory. So it looks like he starts out by proposing the problem of decreasing fertility rates. And naturally, instead of, making the economy work for the average people and the middle class, or, I don't know, not taxing the shit out of everyone, forcing both parents to work to the point that you do have to spend thousands of dollars on daycare. No. The solution he proposes, of course, the Human Gigafactory. He kinda doomifies the situation by suggesting that humanity is currently in the path to obliteration, and don't think about the existence of Africa within planet Earth and humanity, that 8 billion people are basically nothing. And alternatively, I feel like we could just arrest Bill Gates if we really want to resolve some fertility issues in humanity.
Now, the world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
I'm still trying to figure out what vaccines have to do with reducing the world's population, but I guess that's not really a question for me. That's a question for Billy old boy right here. Hi guys, Editor Cat here. If you have enjoyed my video thus far and you enjoyed digging through the public catacombs we call the internet, I would love it if you considered subscribing to my channel. Thank you. So regarding the Human Gigafactory, Brian goes on to say that he envisions we can make 1 million new human beings within 10 to 15 years, and he directly ties that to how we can become a civilization across the solar system. Yet there's really nothing concrete or thought out, descriptive, detailed, and definitely nothing scientific in his Human Gigafactory piece here. Then he has a bit on his website about funding, and he's letting people know, hey, are you interested in making human clones? Well, bring your project to us and let's talk. If we're not the right fit, then we'll just, find a better match for you. And I'm just wondering, where is he getting all this money from? Well, let's take a look at the cloning section real quick. And it looks like we got lists of companies, lots of companies that do animal cloning mostly. Some sections that sort of looks like he copy-pasted certain scientific terms that are relevant from Wikipedia or other places. References section. Not too much, not too interesting here. I'm a little disappointed, Brian. In the, let's see, designer babies, FAQ section, we have an ethical and legal questions section. And I think more than anything else in this section, Brian's moral ambiguity and middle school level philosophical thinking kind of come to the forefront. So for example, we have a question about how much will it cost? Won't the rich create a generation of super children who will take over the world and plunge us into plutocratic dystopia? And I think that's a pretty valid question, considering the billionaires right now are already apparently eating children. And Brian's response really is to be dismissive as a whole, but more specifically kind of try a trickle-down designer babies type of argument, and then create a false equivalency between the ruling class, hyper-wealthy genetic superhumans taken over and a spontaneous zombie apocalypse, and then claiming that widespread R&D is going to make it the most equitable distribution, as if even 1% of the world's population has the capacity and understanding, let alone the resources to create designer babies and do R&D in designer babies and genetic engineering. Also, I'm sorry, but wasn't he the one emailing Epstein about unlocking commercial opportunities with the whole designer babies project? To the question of humans don't understand biology, why do you think you can improve upon nature? He extensively bitches about natural selection and nature, which does make me wonder, does he have something against his own natural selection genetic cards that he was dealt, that he's so focused and obsessed on this topic? Then he goes on to bicker about how you can't just throw away all the advancements that science has made over the last 100 years. I think it's somewhere in between. While I don't think whoever was interviewing him, assuming someone's interviewing him and he isn't just throwing himself straw man questions and just answering them on his website, yes, humanity has made great accomplishments and we have a better understanding of our biology than any other point in history before, but to say 100, 200, even 300 years of research is sufficient for us to understand all the mechanisms and how they affect one another in such complex organisms such as human beings, let alone further complex organisms, which are developing organisms such as children or embryos, is also a bit too much in my opinion. And finally, he tries to create another false equivalency by trying to apply all the benefits that we've gained from technology over the years by conflating that with designer babies. I mean, you cannot equate running water and electricity to the supposed and alleged benefits we might get from designer babies, assuming we can get that right anytime soon. And you know what? Moral question put aside, let's say designer babies are something that we should strive for. I'm going to go ahead and argue that should be done under supervision with trained staff in a university lab or Yeah, maybe a government lab. I don't know about that one. We're gonna end up with like super soldiers instead, but not in some dude's garage, not DIY by an IT guy. I mean, especially not a guy who was trying to cozy up to Epstein to get the funding for his passion project. I don't know, that's just my opinion. And he does say here, people that oppose him have a right to their own opinions, and he has his own opinions, and that really is what it comes down to. A lot of this website is just kind of his own opinions. Won't this create a genetic arms race between countries seeking to enhance their own citizens? Maybe. And while some of Brian's biohacking enthusiast comrades have also contributed to this site, quick look through changelog suggests that Brian is the most dedicated and prolific contributor and maintainer, having been contributing to this wiki for over a decade. While the topics covered on Brian's DIY Human Plus website is extensive, the content seems to be limited to regurgitated research from other sources and Brian's opinions in the form of philosophical ponderings around the subject. Now, there is one rule and one rule only on Brian's wiki, and that is no philosophy. Violators that are bad at philosophy will be harshly judged, which I find to be quite ironic. The last thing I want to review from Brian's website is a linked article in the MIT Technology Review where Brian has been interviewed on the subject, where we can gain some further insights into his thinking and finally get one of my burning questions answered. And that is, what Ukraine lab? Alright, so this is a fairly long article, so I'm just gonna hit some of the key points, and if you guys want to read the whole thing, here's the title. So right off the bat, we learned that Brian is a nationally ranked speed typist. Cool. He was 29 years old when this article was published in 2019, so that puts him about 35 to 36 right now. He's a programmer and a Bitcoin investor. Notice how nowhere it mentions him to be somewhat of a scientist or having a scientific background or any research experience or lab experience or degree in biology or any of that. Why are they even interviewing this guy? Or we learned that Brian is starting a company focused on the production of designer babies and human germline genetic engineering with Max Berry. Here is Brian, here's Max. This article is from February of 2019. That is after and right around the time where Brian and Epstein are emailing each other regarding setting up this designer baby and cloning company and Epstein funding it secretively, and I do wonder if this fella right here had any clue where the funding for their new company would be coming from. We talk about here Bishop's hopes regarding children who can grow muscle without weightlifting. I mean, why do any of the work? Here it mentions a whistleblower was able to get Brian's designer baby PDF deck that he sent to Epstein. I'm assuming it's the one he sent to Epstein. I suppose it could be a different designer baby deck that he's been sending around. In it, he learns that Brian's talking about revenue in the billions from creating hundreds of thousands of enhanced babies, and later goes on to say instead of using the methodology that was being tested out in China, he envisions performing gene therapy on the testicles of a male volunteer. That way, sperm-carrying DNA enhancements could be used to get a woman pregnant. We have some criticism from other folks, but more interestingly, in talking about the pitch deck, it says the two entrepreneurs say their technology's addressable market is the entire future of humanity, and offer a blueprint for gene therapy virus containing what would be an unwieldy payload of genetic instructions. So when you say a gene therapy virus, are we just suggesting we infect people with the gene therapy? Even if that's not the intention, is that a possible outcome? Like you got some radioactive balls because you volunteered to be these two nut jobs first subject, and now you sneeze on someone and their babies come out fucked up? I don't know, I'm just thinking about all the possibilities the same way Brian Bishop seems to be. Next section talks about Brian the Bitcoin guy, how he worked at Ledger X, and how he thinks people can pay for their designer babies with Bitcoin, which I do think kind of goes hand in hand with how Epstein was really interested in Bitcoin and was discussing that with another guy named Jeremy Rubin from Ledger X. previous video if you're not sure what I'm talking about, and how he wanted to fund this, but secretly he didn't want anyone to know that it was he, Jeffrey Epstein, who was involved in funding this project. So that does kind of go hand in hand, right? If you want to try to keep a certain level of anonymity, you pay for things with Bitcoin. And Mississippi sperm. Is that like German bratwurst? In this section, we resolve a different mystery. The one about the amateur in Mississippi testing human sperm modification. One person Bishop recently provided resources to is David Aishi, a ponytailed Mississippi oil worker and dog breeder who has made the news for trying to genetically engineer dogs. Working out of a shed turned laboratory, aka garage biology, Aishi has been mixing jellyfish DNA with mastiff sperm, hoping to create glowing puppies. He hasn't succeeded yet, despite inseminating at least 6 dogs with the modified sperm. And this is what I mean. So what does that mean? Like, you inseminated the dogs, were the puppies born and they just weren't glowing? Does that count as a failure? Were the puppies not born? If the puppies were born, what'd you do with those 6 puppies? If you had to try 30 other puppies, what would you do with those? What happens when the embryo you create isn't exactly what you're looking for? It's not what the customers wanted. You just like toss the baby in the trash can? I don't know. But they never really seem to touch on that, do they? And also, like, dogs are just so incredible. Like, they're so incredible and wonderful. Why do you need them to also glow? Ishii told me that after meeting with Bishop and Barry, he also tried adding DNA constructs to a sample of his own sperm. Of course he did. And you know what? I am willing to bet 10 solid, real good push-ups that this guy is single. You know what? All of these motherfuckers are single. No way. There's no way. They're all single, for sure. And let it not get lost in the sauce of my commentary here. The whole point of this section is supposed to be about how Bishop is sending this fella, this dog inseminator, money through PayPal so that he can continue to inseminate dogs and do odd things with his own sperm. Alright, sorry, I'm regressing for a second. I skipped this and I thought it was too good not to hit. Some DIY biology enthusiasts also don't think government should have much say in what happens to people's genomes, and in general, I would agree with less government involvement and most things is better, but I might be willing to carve out a little segment for this particular issue. And a few have already self-administered untested gene therapies. These experiments have been, for the most part, trouser-dropping spectacles aimed at hogging attention. Is this like a euphemism for they were trying to increase the size of their hog? One entrepreneur who jabbed a syringe full of DNA into his thigh was later found dead in a sensory deprivation tank, a death ruled as accidental. Finally, the moment I have been waiting for, the Ukraine lab. In January, I joined Brian and Barry for a virtual tour of a Ukrainian lab they are paying to conduct exploratory experiments on mice. It is part of the Institute of Gerontology at Ukraine's Academy of Medical Sciences in Kiev. Alright, so mystery solved. They're not even doing the actual experimentation in their garage like a proper DIY, biohacking, transhumanist garage biologist. No, they're paying a lab to do it in Ukraine, which I guess is better. But in the emails, he's like, yeah, my Ukraine lab. No, bitch, it's the Institute of Gerontology at Ukraine's Academy of Medical Sciences in Kiev's lab. How can you be so garage biology, do it yourself, and then pay for someone else to do it? At least be an honest mad scientist, gosh. And lastly, so earlier they mentioned Bishop, who is barrel-shaped and well over 6 feet tall, did say one enhancement he'd like to see would be a gene to control weight. And barrel-shaped is a really nice way of describing an overweight fella. But this again brings me back to what I was wondering earlier. Rather than just eating healthy, eating better, going to the gym, Is he going through all this trouble? Is he this obsessed with gene editing and modifications to fix something he sees as a shortcoming in himself? Is he this obsessed with it because of his internal insecurities? And the article finishes off with, I ended up wondering what Bishop's underlying motivations were. While he spoke to me freely about his ideas, he clammed up when I asked him about his family background. I never learned why, deep down, he had become obsessed with human enhancements, with climbing the double helix. Bishop felt these questions were getting too personal. His motivations, he said, were complicated. Beyond maintaining the DIY Human Plus wiki, biohacking and DIY human enhancements seem to consume the remainder of Brian's online presence. In fact, the only other subjects that compete for Brian's attention are Bitcoin and blockchain. And nowhere is this more apparent than in Brian's Reddit history. And I am 100% certain that this is his Reddit, because not only does he have terrible OPSEC where he uses the same username across all of his social media platforms and then posts this username on his DIY Human Plus wiki openly, but also because he responded on the r/Epstein subreddit with a comment discussing his designer baby deck, where in one of the emails his phone number was left unredacted, saying, "Can you guys please just email me instead? Why do you have to call my phone number?" Therefore confirming that Kanzure is indeed his Reddit account. And just to be clear, I'm not going to show his phone number, and please do not reach out to him. Please do not harass him in any way. I do not condone any type of harassment behavior. A quick look at Brian's Reddit history reveals that he mostly frequents subs that are related to transhumanism, genetics, Bitcoin, and cryptocurrencies or cryptocurrency adjacent subreddits. Most of his posts and comments seem to revolve around his development work with Bitcoin, or him bickering with other Redditors regarding the feasibility of certain genetic modification workflows, the ethics of gene editing, or providing resources in the form of links to his DIY Human Plus wiki. At this point, you might be wondering, does Brian do anything other than Bitcoin and garage biology? Well, fear not, because a quick look through his YouTube channel reveals that on occasion he likes to sit back and relax while playing Batman Arkham Knight or Marvel games, oftentimes documenting his gameplay, challenges, and the glitches that he finds. But even his YouTube channel is not spared from his obsession regarding DIY biohacking and transhumanism. Among the countless superhero gameplay footage, it's easy to miss the presentations Brian has given at the Human Plus Summit over the years, including on the topics of DIY transhuman tech and personal manufacturing, where he discusses things like what lab or shop equipment one might need to get started with DIY human enhancements for transhumanist ambitions. From one of Brian's presentations, we can even hear how Brian defines DIY biology in his own words.
Well, Do-It-Yourself Biology is a group formed over the internet of people who believe that they should be doing biology work outside of academic and institutional settings.
Which sounds great as long as you don't involve Jeffrey Epstein in it, perhaps. Brian even has some creative marketing material on his page for transhumanism and synthetic biology. Let's watch it together, shall we?
You are Balenciaga Synthetic Biology.
Okay, we're only 10 seconds in, and this is so uncanny valley. I mean, what the fuck is going on right now?
What is the difference between synthetic biology and biology Balenciaga?
I don't know, Brian, you tell me.
After all, to the well-organized mind, Symbio is but the next great adventure.
This is giving hella discount store, Elon Musk, Neuralink vibes. Do we all need to have chips in our brains for the future? Like, is that a necessity? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't consent to that.
You'll soon find some DNA is better than others.
Okay, the music's not half bad. I feel like bobbing to it, but did you just hear that? You'll soon find some DNA is better than others.
Slight eugenics vibes now.
You must join Synbio Beta.
No, I don't need to join Symbio Beta.
There is no dual use. There is only Symbio and those too weak to seek it.
and those who are too weak to seek it. Ugh. I don't know about you, but that video does not make me too inclined to join his revolution. Probably the opposite, if anything. I think Brian himself best summarizes in his X bio his own passion for DIY garage biology, genetic modifications, embryo gene editing, cloning and human enhancements, etc. Mad science. Well, at least he's somewhat self-aware. Well, that's a really fun picture, though at the same time it's almost like foreshadowing the future he's trying to create. Alright, let's take a little stroll through Brian's X profile, shall we? So in his posts, we got a pin post where he is advertising his Discord server for the Human Plus roadmap. Let's see, 15 years of molecular nanotech, brain emulations, DNA synthesis, longevity, cryonics, and more. Join the Human Plus roadmap, now available on Discord. Work on cutting-edge technology development projects. I still fail to see on their website what development projects relating to garage biology they've participated in. It seems like they're either paying a lab in Ukraine to do their trials, or they're regurgitating other people's research, but what do I know? We got tech talk, some AI discussion. We got Brian responding to a post about a lab attempting to shorten drug discovery process from decades to weeks or months, and he says, what if we could just do things? What if regulations didn't require multiple years of paperwork? And I mean, look, I get it. Regulations do really slow things down to a point where it seems more overburdensome than helpful. I mean, if you've ever tried to build a house or just look at all the regulations and code involved in building a house, it makes a person want to cry. But at the same time, for things such as medicine or drug discovery, I do feel like a long development period should be allowing for proper testing and discovery of side effects, so that people don't just take these drugs and quote-unquote medications without informed consent and without being aware of possible side effects. But I mean, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of overburdensome regulations either, so maybe I can find some common ground with Brian here. We got Brian responding to a guy here, fella saying, my 10-year plan, receive $10 million of investment from Hong Kong and establish a gene editing laboratory in Beijing, attend and speak at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Ew, gross. Okay. And Brian says, in Peter Thiel voice, why can't you do this in 6 months? I can't tell if he's being sarcastic or not, so I won't make fun of him for this. More tech discussions around LLMs. And here he's saying, here's a list of transcribed lectures regarding the biology of anti-aging, all links to his website, DIY Human Plus, classic. Let's see what he's got in his replies. Oh, yep, someone is talking about the Brian Bishop designer baby emails with Epstein, and they thought a different Brian Bishop was this Brian Bishop. The other Brian Bishop is clarifying this is not me. And our Brian Bishop says, how strange, what a mystery. That's a little cheeky. Have we isolated the gene for typing fast? Brian responds, yes, actually. Highlights from 2023. He says, you don't need privacy, and privacy is only for criminals. Are lies criminals tell you to make their jobs easier. Okay. I have found some common ground with Brian. I agree with you wholeheartedly regarding this statement, Brian. He continues on to say, small bits of what you think are irrelevant pieces of information can be combined to profile you and make relevant information. Hence why privacy is so important in the modern era. Well, brother, why? Then why are all your social media profiles sharing the same username? That is such bad OPSEC. And then you associate your username with your actual name all over the internet. But I mean, I agree with the sentiment. He's advertising his website. For years, I've been keeping the internet's largest list of human genetic engineering upgrade targets. Here are some of my favorites. Let's check out the media. What in the 9th circle of hell is this? Head count growth. Okay. I mean, I feel like most people don't even quite know how to utilize the one head they have. Some days that includes me. I feel like I'm walking around with half a brain. So what are we supposed to do with 19 heads? What is the purpose of this? How is this supposed to enhance human beings? I'm curious. If you have thoughts on how 19 heads could enhance the experience of being a human, please put it in the comments, because I am a little baffled by this. Mostly creeped out, but also baffled. Yep, naturally. I do recall a couple years back they were growing like ears on mice. Maybe that was just a South Park thing.
What's that the penis doing in my kitchen? Hey, don't you dare kill my penis!
This really brings a new understanding to the phrase "get your head out of your ass." Pig's ass. We're gonna grow a head on it. Why not? This definitely seems up Brian's alley. This does seem like something Epstein and billionaires would be interested in, to elongate their lifespan. Get you that young body that you wish you still had, and we'll just attach your old head to it. Or maybe we'll just transfer your brain into the new head and body that we clone from your old body. This seems like something he would be into, which is a bit contradictory, because if you care about privacy, you're not gonna want a Tesla robot or any robot, AI robot, or even an Amazon Echo or Alexa or whatever in your house. I certainly don't want any more spyware in my house. I don't know about you guys, but I think the cell phones are sufficient. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Brian Bishop, Jeffrey Epstein's DIY clone guy. If you enjoy getting lost in the internet sauce, please consider liking my video and subscribing to my channel. If you haven't seen part 1 to this series, that is where I cover all the emails in detail. However, I'm gonna be honest, that was my first YouTube video. The intro is way too long and the pacing could be better. So if you're curious about the emails, please check out the video. Maybe skip the first 4 to 5 minutes and, I don't know, put it on like 1.5 to 2x speed. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.